So I really like gaming accessories. You probably can tell that because I do a lot of those type of videos on this channel. Honestly, some are considerably better than others, but there are some accessories that actually enhance how you play a game and just make it much better. For example, on my PSVR 2, when I play Gran Turismo 7, I use a steering wheel and a gear stick, and it just puts the experience up by about 10-20 times as great. It's so much better by having those accessories. Having something physical to hold makes a massive difference, and this is why people are going on about Apple Vision Pro being a terrible gaming device. That isn't as good as actually having something to grip. Now that brings us on to today's video, because I watched the most intense and riveting and exciting trailer for a VR accessory that I think I've ever seen. This accessory is WieldVR's OneStock, and no matter how much I end up liking this product, no one will like this product better than the man in this video, who I think is the founder of the company.
This is the OneStock, the first fully versatile, on-the-fly adjustable VR Gunstock.
My name is Timo, and I love racing simulators and the feeling and the immersion of the wheel in my hands, mastering my skills and techniques, pushing myself to the limit. And I wanted the same depth of experience for VR shooters. But holding two separate controllers just doesn't feel like using physical rifles, and no Gunstock on the market lived up to my standards. They were unadaptable, cumbersome to use, expensive, and poorly made.
Throwing out some absolute shade at other VR stock guns, but let's continue.
So I forged my own weapon and invented the OneStock. My mission is to declare war on mediocrity in a niche plagued by poor quality 3D prints.
It goes on a lot like that. It's basically this guy telling you all the amazing things about this OneStock, which ultimately, when you watch the video, I'm like pumped. I'm like, yeah, I am keen. I'm ready to go to battle for this guy.
War!
Now, I just need to get my hands on one. I've got one.
War!
Now, WieldVR actually sent me this. This is one of their prototype models, so this isn't the final thing. And they're slowly doing like a sort of slow introduction to this thing so they don't get overwhelmed with orders. I'll get onto the details of that later. But I wanted to actually test this out. And like normally on this channel, I don't just big things up. I want to actually see whether it's useful and whether it's actually worth spending money on improving your games with this accessory. Now, before I break down what my experience actually was using this, let's just sort of break down exactly what it is and how it should work. So essentially what this is a VR gunstock. So you've got this bit over here which goes into your shoulder like so. And when you're gaming, and when you're in a game, you essentially have your controller in your hand and you just sort of place it into there. It's not attached, there's nothing keeping it in that particular place, but you place it in there and then you essentially just sort of hold it in place with the rest of your hand, and you can still use the controller as normally, but then when you need to drop it, you can just sort of let go and it drops. Now this has this soft touch strap that was mentioned in the video. Now essentially you have this over the back of your neck and it actually feels quite good. It's a really nice material, which is really good to see, and you can very easily adjust it and loosen it by sort of pulling at this strap, and it just sort of slides through this thing really nicely and easily, and you can tighten it up really quickly without having to faff with it. And it's all designed to be able to be as easily adjustable whilst you're actually in VR, because that's the thing that's going to make this thing unusable. So how adjustable is it? You've got quite a few areas to be able to adjust it. So I'll work front to back. So you've got the controller mounts. There's one at the front here. So when you're holding your controller, you can twist it like so. You can angle it as well, and you can sort of tighten and loosen the screws to make that easier or harder if you want to. You can do exactly the same on the back controller as well, twist it and angle it however you like it. You can also adjust the exact positions using the lower sort of dial, so then you can slide it forward and backward on this thing, and you can also swap it out for other little adapters. So if you have different types of controllers, for example, you have the Valve Index or you have PSVR 2 controllers, there are specific adaptations for those, and you can order one particularly for that headset. There's this little sort of clip here which adjusts very quickly and easily the distance between your two controllers, so you can have it fairly long like that, or you can have it sort of pushed right up close like that. And you can choose, you can either sort of leave it open and then have that so you can sort of adjust it on the fly as you go, or use a pump action shotgun, or what you can do is you can sort of clip it in at a particular length like that, and then you have it at a certain length and it's very stable, and then you can quickly change it like so fairly easily if you change gun. You then have another adjustment at the back, and this is to adjust how sort of far forward your stock actually goes on the unit. Then you have an adjustment here for the distance between sort of that bit and the back of the stock. And then you have another adjustment back here so you can change the height of the OneStock. And you can also take it all the way out, and if you have, for example, the PlayStation VR 2, you can actually flip it around and put it in this way around, which means you can have the OneStock there, and then you can have your controllers that sort of clip on underneath it as well. So as far as customization goes, it is fairly easy to sort of do it on the fly. There are certain things that are sort of a bit more difficult. For example, this one at the back and this sort of push tab is a little bit harder to do as you go. However, especially the controller ones and the sort of distance between the controller and everything like that, you can change that in-game very easily, and I actually tend to find that that worked pretty well. So I tested the OneStock on a variety of different games on the Quest 3, and honestly I found it to be actually pretty good. Now when I first put it on and I started using it, my initial reaction was that this is just going to get in the way. This is just a lot faffier than just lifting up your arms, and it is to a degree, but then you start to notice things as you play. So the first things I found that were quite difficult was that when you actually had this thing on and you were in a game, ready to go, you'd have it sort of down by your side like that, and then when the game started and you went and picked up a gun. So for example, in the game Population 1, you start off with no guns, so you're going around running around, you're picking up loot, and eventually you can get yourself a gun. When you pick up a gun, you have to then obviously pick up your actual gun. So you get the gun in your hand, so you're still holding it, and then you have to sort of reach down and find the positioning. Now I did it quite well there because I've had a lot of practice. When I started, I found that quite difficult, just sort of remembering exactly where it was, and it was just a bit of a faff trying to find where I needed to put my controllers, and then I could sort of adjust it and play. Now, if you're having to do that very quickly and you have someone shooting at you in a game, that very quickly becomes something where you're like, oh, actually, I'm not sure whether this is just going to be too much of a faff. And honestly, that was my main concern, was that when I first started playing, is that this is just going to get in the way. It's just going to make the gaming experience, even though shooting the guns might feel better, it's just not going to be great. But then you just start to sort of get used to it, and it very quickly becomes something that you just sort of do naturally, and it doesn't feel like an extra step. But then what happens is you start seeing what the trade-offs are actually for. For example, in VR shooters, probably one of the things that is the hardest in VR shooters is sort of long-range shooting. I tend to find that especially things like sniper rifles and stuff like that, if I'm holding my hands up and it's like based on tracking my hands, it's not going to be the most stable because I'm just sort of holding my hands with nothing to sort of actually hold on to. As much as I can get it fairly stable, it's not that stable, do you know what I mean? It's not stable as in holding something pressed into your shoulder. And that's the thing that I noticed very quickly, was I was just much better at was being accurate with a sniper rifle, especially if you're just quickly shooting places and you're quickly shooting someone that's very, very far away. You can be very, very precise with your aim, and you let much less sort of scatter happening. And this is the same not only with sniper rifles, but with other sort of rifles and assault rifles and stuff like that. You tend to find that that is just a much easier way of firing. Now, the thing I noticed a little bit less with is that sort of close range stuff, because when you're close range, it's sort of less important exactly how precise you are. I did find that it still was a nice thing to sort of have, and you just get in the habit of holding it, but you don't notice a huge increase in your accuracy. Long distance firing, I noticed it instantly how much better I was at shooting with sniper rifles. Now, Population 1 is a game that's really good because you spend a lot of time switching between different weapons and just picking up whatever's lying around. Another game that I went and had a little go at was Pavlov, because there's a massive array of different guns that you can sort of play with and sort of test out what the best sort of grips are for whatever gun you're using. So I hopped onto Pavlov and I had a go on there as well. And again, I noticed that I was much more accurate, especially with those sort of long distance guns. Now, there are a few ways that I can sort of explain to people whether something is sort of worth it and something is actually worth using. Now, with a lot of things in gaming, I find some things are very, very cool, but sometimes the faff just stops you bothering to use it. For example, I tried out like battens and stuff like that for Beat Saber, which are meant to sort of extend your grip and just make it a little bit easier, which was good, but I just thought the faff of actually getting it set up every time, it just wasn't worth it to me to actually use for a very slight advantage on a game which I don't really play that often. Now, the beauty of this is that this works for every VR shooter. Every single VR shooter I tried, I could use this with no sort of extra learning curve, do you know what I mean? And as much as you have to sort of put it on your head and you do have to adjust it for your guns in game, it doesn't feel like a chore having to sort of screw your controllers into it and change it manually, because all you need to do really is have it set up in a sort of fairly standard way, put it over your shoulders, and then Bob's your uncle, you're good to go. I actually tend to find that I left sort of this clip open because one, if you had a shotgun, you could very easily sort of just pump your shotgun like that. But also how that slides out, especially on this particular prototype, again, I can't speak for every single one. It doesn't sort of just drop back, and it's quite sort of, it's slightly stiff, so it means it requires a bit of force to sort of extend it and stuff like that. So what I tend to find is that I would just sort of leave it out there if I was using a sniper rifle, and then I could sort of pull it back in depending on whether I'm using an SMG or an assault rifle or a sniper. And then that mixed with the fact that I can sort of just move these, and it's tight enough that it doesn't just happen by itself. But it's easy enough that all you need to do is think about moving it and you can move it. It's pretty good. Now the next way I test it is not only whether I feel like I want to pick it up every time I play, but also if I don't pick it up, do I miss it? And blimey, how do you suddenly notice that your arms are just flimsy and not holding anything as to when you're used to it and then you put it down? It completely kills the immersion. That difference in immersion between actually holding something in your hands that's stable and just having your hands up, it feels entirely different. Now, one thing I would massively sort of encourage you to use if you have them, or get if you have them and you're using a VR stock like this, is controller grips. So I'm currently testing out some accessories from WieldVR, which is a different VR accessory brand. And one of the accessories that I'm testing out is these controller grips that sort of clip onto the side of your thing, which I think are really, really good. But these are actually ideal for this because it means when you let go of that, and if you accidentally let go of your controller stays in your hand and you're not having to sort of fumble around. And I did find that it was a little bit more faffy to use when I was just using my controller through the wrist strap like that, because when I would let go of the Gunstock, sometimes I'd accidentally drop my controller and I'd have to sort of try and pick it up. It did just feel like a much better experience when I had that strapped to my hand to be able to sort of pick up and use. Now, especially in the sort of early stages, these things are incredibly limited and it is invite only, which essentially means that WieldVR have given the people who have reviewed these a set number that they can sort of invite people to come and buy. So I've put a link in the description below, and that takes you to their website, and then you need to enter a code, Samuel25. If you enter that code, you will be given one of the passes that has been allocated to me and my followers. That is a limited number of people because there's only a limited number of these available at the moment. Now, if you follow that link and you enter that code and it says that this code's been fully used up and utilized and there's none left, you can join a waiting list as well. But genuinely, this product does get my seal of approval. Now, if you are into VR shooters and you spend a lot of time in VR shooters, I genuinely do recommend this. It is actually fighting the war on bad VR stock design, I guess.
War!
Now, you won't be getting this exact one because this exact one is a prototype. You'll be getting a slightly more polished version of this. Apparently there's been quite a few different upgrades made since. But if you are really into VR shooters, I would definitely recommend getting one of these. It does improve your game, it improves your immersion as well, and it's actually quite easy to use, which VR stocks normally aren't. So guys, I really appreciate your time. If you made it this far in the video, well done to you. Stick in the comments below your favourite VR accessory. I want to know what it is. Is it a head strap? Is it one of these? Is it a stand like that Kiwi one over there, which is just freaking awesome? I love it. And let me know if you've used VR stocks in the past. Does this one sound like it would be a better upgrade than the one you're currently using? But guys, that's all from me. Thank you very much for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.
War!